What's up, good people? This is your man Tony Wiggins here with Locked On Jaguars. We're going to talk more about the Jaguars staff additions that have already started. Mike McCoy hired as the quarterback coach. We'll talk about that and more here today on Locked On Jaguars.
You are Locked On Jags, your daily Jacksonville Jaguars podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Thank you guys for joining me today here on Locked On Jaguars, where it's your team every day, making us your first listen here on Locked On Jaguars. I got to let you know that Get Upside, just download that free Get Upside app and use the promo code touchdown to get 25% per gallon, 25 cents per gallon or more cash back on your first tank. There are sponsors today, so make sure that you check out the Get Upside app. I want to talk to you guys about the addition of Mike McCoy, first edition of the staff by new head coach Doug Pederson. I could never get sick and tired of saying new head coach Doug Pederson because I am thrilled that the Jacksonville Jaguars made such a great hire and got an adult in the building and got a real football coach. Well, Mike McCoy is also a real football coach. He's a guy who's been a head coach in the National Football League, been an offensive coordinator at several stops. There's a long, long history of being able to get that done with that position. So I think it's a great addition. And we talked about adding people to the staff. It'll show you just how serious these guys are about winning. And that's what happens when you get a guy like Doug Pederson, a guy that people respect, a guy as a coach that people want to attach themselves to because they expect there to be some sort of success at some point, which helps their career. And I think it's a home run hire. I think it was great that they got someone who has so much experience to be the right-hand man for Trevor Lawrence. Now, I know Doug Pederson is going to be the play caller, but you need more than that. You need a guy who's a teacher. You need someone who's going to help with mechanics. You need a fresh set of eyes to help your young quarterback. And I think Trevor Lawrence is going to be helped. I think the word is exponentially by this addition of Mike McCoy. I expect more great staff additions. I expect names that you know, some names that you don't. But isn't it good that we have this trust that even after the last decade, especially this last season, where there was so much dysfunction in the organization, there seems to be this feeling of trust when it comes to Doug Pederson. And I think that trust is directly affected by the fact that he has credibility as a Super Bowl winning head coach. We personally saw him not that long ago hoisting the Lombardi Trophy with his team and actually beating the New England Patriots and Bill Belichick and Tom Brady. I think that goes an absolute long way. And the way he handled himself at the press conference, it just feels good for me to talk to Jaguar fans about positive stuff as opposed to drama. Now, I know they still have to win on the field, but this hire yesterday of Mike McCoy really helping Trevor Lawrence in the long run and in the short term, because it's going to help him with his mechanics. And like I said, he's going to give him a guy that he'll have as a sounding board, as opposed to using the kid who's 21 or 22 years old to sort of keep the natives calm and talk about stuff that he shouldn't have been talking to us about how the team is and what needs to stop. And it just feels good to know that they're going to insulate this young man and they're going to allow him to really fulfill his potential as a football player. I can see and hear it resonate in people's voices when they tweet and talk about the Jaguars, about, look, it feels like a real organization now. Shad is also, as we mentioned yesterday, he's going to buffer up the support staff in the front office and restructure it. It's almost as if Doug Pederson probably told him, or Shad listened to people throughout this process that said, look, we need more eyes. We need fresh eyes. We need more than just one person doing this, and we need more than just this small shell of a staff. I need quality control people, man. I need people who have eyes, and not the type that were hired last year where people had titles that you had never heard of in the National Football League. And yeah, I'm going to continue my indictment of Urban Meyer for wasting everyone's time and wasting all of the Jaguars' energy and probably 1 year of Trevor Lawrence's career by just being so dysfunctional and unorganized. This already feels the way it's supposed to feel. This already has uh, hints that this thing is going to at some point turn in the right direction. I'm cool. I always do this, but I'm cool with Doug Pederson walking out of that tunnel and looking any coach in the eye and thinking that they have a shot. We got a shot to win because I've seen him beat the GOAT before. So along with that, there are some other things. Greg Cosell talked about the offensive line, and we're going to get into that in segment 2, and then we're going to look at a little bit more free agency in segment 3, since that's where we are. But Greg Cosell talked about Doug Pederson and his tendencies, and one of the things that he did was buffer up the offensive line and make sure that it wasn't just a middle of the road average offensive line in Philly. It turned out to be one of the 5 best offensive lines in the National Football League. So Greg Cosell agrees that that's another area that he's going to look at right away in free agency and in the draft. And I don't blame him. This is an I told you so moment for me, but I don't think you can survive in the National Football League with an average offensive line. That's just okay. I think that has to be a part of your team that is stellar, that you can really, really depend on, guys, down the stretch in tight and close games, because all it takes is to make one mistake. And if you and if your quarterback gets banged up or at critical junctures of the game, the guy's running for his life if you can't block people. And then it helps you during the run also when you're trying to run the football and you're really, really trying to get after the other team. Use the clock, manage the game. It's good to have a really, really good offensive line because you really keep the defense on its toes. All right, so we're going to talk about the offensive line. We're going to talk about how many people I think need to be replaced on that line and where that help can come from. And we'll do that in just a second here on a Tuesday edition of Locked On Jaguars. I got to tell you about BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before as football continues its march through the playoffs right to the big game that's coming up here in a few days. BetOnline.net remains the best spot for all of your sports scores, podcasts, and news this season. And it's not just football. BetOnline has up-to-the-minute info on pro and college hoops, NHL, boxing, UFC, along with live real-time updates of current games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the new amazing offers available for the 2022 season. BetOnline is where the game starts. And it's not a game, it is a podcast, and it is free on all platforms, and it is called Locked On Jaguars, and you are joining us here today and making us your first listen as you do always, and we are eternally grateful for that. Make sure you like and subscribe to the YouTube page as well. I'm about this close to having 1,000 followers. You guys have really been doing a good job. And when we get there, I'm going to say, Mama, we made it. We all made it. We made it together here on Locked On Jaguars, and we appreciate you making us your first listen because it's your team every day. The offensive line, there's been a lot of discussion by me and other people, very, very smart people. Alfie Crow of Big Cat Country, we kind of used to disagree on it, but Alfie is one of the guys really that, since I've been covering this team, has always been a big voice for the Jaguars and for the fan base. And guys like that, when I think of guys like him and I think about Cap and I think about Dilla and even the guys that cover the team, John Shipley, Demetrius Harvey, I'm just so happy that we all finally, I'm going to put myself in that too, that we all actually finally have something that seems real, serious, tangible football stuff. I mean, I did like that. Dave Caldwell was cool with me, and I love Doug Marrone. And it's just that there always seemed to be something missing. Well, now we got Doc. I'm going to refer to him as the Doc Holliday character since I went out and saw I saw Tombstone this weekend, and some guys just you feel good about, like when Johnny Ringo was going all crazy, and Doc says, "I'm your Huckleberry," and he's, "I don't want none of you." That's where I feel like with Doug Pederson, and I think one of the things that Doug Pederson is going to do is according to Greg Cosell, who knows him very well, and I saw this tweet Demetrius Harvey tweeted out this morning, is he's going to make sure the offensive line is up to par. Now, they haven't been terrible. I never wanted people to think that they were terrible, but I think that some people are okay with them just being fine, and I've never been that way. I think when you have a really, really good football team, I think the offensive line has to be up to par. Going into the big game this weekend, that's one of the things that people are talking about with the Bengals. Like, there's no way that they can block. There's no way that they can block Aaron Donald and Von Miller and that crew. And I'm in agreement. I think they can win the game. We just saw him win a game when the quarterback got sacked 9 times. I think Joe gets the ball out so fast, and I think they run the ball so well with Joe Mixon, and they throw the ball to him out of the backfield, and they have so many weapons that a team like that can stumble, bumble, and kind of overcome it a little bit. But even then, they're going to fix that offensive line in the offseason. Trust me. They're going to keep adding to it and trying to get better. They're also probably going to do more in the defensive backfield. So one of the things that I've gotten, had some, I wouldn't call it heated debates, but discussions with people, smart people, is about the offensive line. And when you look at our offensive line from right to left or left to right or whatever, it just doesn't seem like it doesn't seem like the type of line that could eventually get you into the playoffs and win a championship. I like some of the pieces. I think Cam Robinson's a good football player. I think Cam Robinson probably needs to go to a team where there's at least 4 other guys just as good as him on the offensive line. I mean, I think he'd be perfect in Pittsburgh, right? Where they play a certain brand of football where they're going to run the football probably more than they throw it. And I think he could benefit from that. I asked Cam years ago if he could play left guard. He says he's never played guard before in his life. That doesn't mean he can't do it, but he kind of gave me a look like he ain't had no interest in doing that. So, do you pay him that much money to be your left tackle? I don't think you do, especially since you have Walker Little on the roster, and I don't know if Walker Little is good enough to be a championship type left tackle. I do think that there's enough potential there, and it depends who they hire as offensive coordinator. As the offensive line coach, they're probably going to give their assessment. I think that's why it's imperative that Doug Pederson continues to do what he does and gets the staff in here, hopefully within the next 5 or 6 days. Because one thing they have to do before they actually go into free agency is they really, really have to evaluate this roster. And when they do that, I think Andrew Norwell is a guy that I don't think you can win with them long-term at being at left guard. I think Brandon Linder is one of the 10 best centers in the NFL, and you can get away with that. Absolutely. You don't let guys like that go. I wouldn't be surprised if Brandon Linder retires a Jacksonville Jaguar. Right guard is a problem. I think AJ Cann is too inconsistent. And I don't think Ben Barch is the long-term answer in terms of being the kind of star power you need at that spot. And then Jawan Taylor. There's going to be a big time assessment of Jawan Taylor and his abilities, and folks are going to wonder how much did George Warhop have to do with the lack of these guys' development. Jawan Taylor is a piece that I don't think they're going to give up on, but I do think that they're going to create competition. If they go into the draft and say let's just say before the draft in free agency, because we'll get to the draft in segment 3. If they go into free agency and say, you know what, we want Teron Armstead. Let's get him. Let's get a left tackle that we can pay because we have all of the salary cap. Somebody that's proven, somebody to really, for the next 3 or 4 years, protect Trevor's blind side while we develop people. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to create competition at right tackle. We're going to see if Jawan Taylor can either play right guard or he's going to battle it out right here, live on the spot with Walker Little, and may the best man win, right? And then I'll probably go out in free agency and make another addition. Yesterday I mentioned Laken Tomlinson, a guy who recently played in San Francisco, and you saw what they did in the run game. He's a free agent, and you can get him for a decent amount and make him your left guard. And then I double back in the draft. They have 2 third-round picks, and I think at that spot, it'll probably be real good value. There's a lot of guys at the Senior Bowl that can really, really play. I know Andrew Stubler, who lined up mostly at left tackle in college, was lined up at right guard in Mobile. So guys like that, folks that are developmental pieces, but you can also probably find you a starter. And if they go real early, they probably won't be in range to get a guy like Kenyon Green, who's going to measure off the charts at about 6'4", 325. But I do believe that there's a lot of pieces uh, in the draft and in free agency that could really, really help the Jaguars. I wouldn't be surprised if the number of new additions on the offensive line, if there were 3 new starters, and then some of the guys that are here now that are starting would make up your depth and your developmental depth, along with maybe another piece that you get in the draft. So I think to be really, really good at that position, that's what you're going to have to do. You're going to have to shore that up. All right, we're going to talk a little bit about draft prospects. We talked about the wide receiver position a little bit yesterday. We'll get back into that and bring that up. I'm going to tell you the importance, too, to make sure that you don't overlook the defensive backs, the guys that have to stop the wide receivers. And it goes a long way to see who they're going to use at defensive coordinator. However, yesterday, I did see a tweet where Doug Pederson said that he's probably going to stick with the 3-4 alignment. And if he does, that kind of gives you an idea of who he may be looking for to be the defense coordinator. So we'll discuss that in segment number 3 in just a second here on Locked On Jaguars. All right, man, check this out. RockAuto.com. I was on the road going up and down I-10, going back and forth to Mobile, and I'm really, really happy that my car uses the right parts and we have the nice accessories too. We get those from rockauto.com because when you're on the road, you want to be safe, you want to get home to your family, and you want your family to get home to you. Imagine if you have a child in the military like I did, or if you have someone away in college. You want to make sure that they have the best parts ever, that they're not on the side of the road. And then you want to save money up to 30, 50, sometimes even 100% when you get said parts. And I'm going to tell you where you do it. You do it at rockauto.com because they've been in business for over 2 decades. They're a family-owned business, great American company. Go to rockauto.com right now and see all the parts available for your car or truck, right? Locked On in their How Did You Hear About Us box so they know we sent you. They have an amazing selection, reliably low prices, all the parts your car will ever need. They're at rockauto.com. You don't have to go stand up in some chain store paying all of that money, answering all of those questions. You just sit at your laptop, bang it out, and then a knocker will come on your door and your parts will be delivered right to your home. So it's rockauto.com. Make sure you write Locked On in the How Did You Hear About Us box. All right, pushing through segment number 3 here on Locked On Jaguars. As we mentioned at the top of the show, Mike McCoy was hired to be the quarterback coach by head coach Doug Pederson. McCoy is a former head coach in the National Football League, and now he has the responsibility of making sure that Trevor Lawrence develops, learns, and has all of the things that he needs and all of the tools and the necessities and resources to develop into a really, really good quarterback. So the rest of the staff, I'm hearing a lot of stuff. I'm hearing Press Taylor may be offered the offensive coordinator position. I'm hearing Vic Fangio. I'm hearing Mike Caldwell. I'm hearing all of these names. Whoever comes in is probably going to stay in a 3-4 alignment. And that would mean that they have to make some decisions on some guys in their front seven. I'd really like to see this team retain Adam Costas. I think he's a really, really good player who can play big end 3 technique, and he gets after and he works really hard. And he's the kind of guy that one of those type of dudes that you really, really have that has a lot of value and that makes your team better. I would also like to see him make sure that they do whatever they can to retain Dewan Smoot. While he's not a starter, you may have to pay him like a guy who is a real, real good backup. And he wants to be in Jacksonville. I think he gives you value at multiple positions. He can stand up. He can put his hand down when they go to their smaller sub packages. I think he's a very, very good player. I do think they're going to do some upgrades on the interior of the linebacking core to go to somebody who can play along with the guys that they already have and compete for a starting position. Get a little bit younger there. You already have Shaq Quarterman at the mic, but along with, Wilson that they have already. But let's create some competition, and there's some really, really good players in the draft that will allow you to do that. They're going to definitely address the edge position. I did suggest that maybe they take Josh Allen and trade him since he has like one more year in his contract. And I don't think he's that. I think he's a good number 2. And if you could possibly sign some people in free agency that can help you right now, Randy Gregory was the name that I thought of. I don't think Dallas is going to hang on to him because they can't pay everybody. And now that the marijuana is allowed, and he ain't got no reason to be suspended no more. So, but he's very, very disruptive. He's quick. He's sudden. If you could do that and then come back late in the first or early in the second and tap in, there's some people there. I don't think Jermaine Johnson's going to be there, but the Jaguars could very well go edge early in the draft too. So if they do that, that'll show up that spot. The defensive backs. I love Tyson Campbell and how he eventually developed. I like Shaquille Griffin. My only problem is that good enough? Or do you need a dynamic player at nickel who can also play outside and create competition? I like Andre Sisco a lot at safety. I think he's sudden. I think this staff will like him probably a lot more than the last staff. And then they're going to have to figure out what they're going to do with Jenkins and some of the other guys, Thomas and all of these dudes. I don't know if Dewey Wingard is a free agent, but I can do without ever seeing him play for the Jaguars again. And, there's nothing personal. It's just, how I know I feel that way, and a lot of other people do feel that way. But I do think that they need to get more dynamic and more athletic at the nickel spot and create some more depth at safety. Now, at safety, there's some guys in free agency. Jesse Bates, who's playing in the Super Bowl, is one of them. I don't know if the Bengals will let him get away. And then it seems like forever, the Williams kid out of New Orleans, Marcus Williams, everybody's been attaching him to Jacksonville for so long. Maybe, just maybe, he might be a guy who's also one of the people that the Jaguars look at. But they have a lot of salary cap space, and they have a lot of things that they need to shore up. I don't want the Jaguars to fall into the rut of adding quantity as much as I think that they're now in a position to get quality. If they come out with 5 guys in free agency that average a B or B plus, I think that's better than what they did last year when they really, really didn't get the marquee guys, and they ended up with a bunch of C plus, C minus dudes, and they added like 13 or 14 of them, and it absolutely did not really, really matter and make their team that much better. I do think they need more top end talent, and I think that they can get that by picking high in each of the first 3 rounds and by using their salary cap space. And I think it's going to be easier because of the presence of Doug Pederson. I really do think guys want to play for him as opposed to folks thinking that Trent Baalke's presence is going to be that much of a difference and a hindrance. As long as they don't lowball people, they got to pay folks. You got to spend the money. I just think they need to go big game hunting. And shout out to my man, James Cohen. I ain't talking about you. Don't be hunting my boy down. But when I say they need to go big game hunting, I mean to go after those marquee people in free agency and get quality over quantity. All right, man. So you want some quality, you make sure you check out the Locked On Bets podcast before you make your wagers on the big game this week. You need to listen to your boy Q, who's also my boy Q, and analyst Lee Sterling, because they're going to give it to you. And you can find the Locked On Bets podcast wherever you get your podcast. And remember, it's free on all platforms. We continue to appreciate you making this your first listen every day here on Locked On Jaguars. I want y'all to take care of each other, man, and stay and remain positive, because I think things are looking up for the team here on the First Coast. It's Duval till we die, man. One love here from Locked On Jaguars, and we'll see you tomorrow.